Hello and welcome to episode number 21 of the Curling Legends podcast. My name's Kevin Palmer, and each week through the curling season, I share a conversation with a player or storyteller from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. We cover curling from the invention of the slide through to the adoption of the free guard zone. Cathy King is on our show today. First, I want to thank you all again for listening and remind you that March is the month of tripod or try-podcasting. Hashtag TRYPOD on Twitter. This is an effort by podcasters to encourage people who do listen to podcasts to just find one friend or family member, although more than one would also be fine, and tell them about podcasting, tell them what you listen to, tell them what your favorite shows are, and help them get started on a podcast. So if you do like this show, and as I say often, you have friends or family members that would like to listen or you think would enjoy it, please help them figure out how to listen to a podcast. You can listen on the webpage at curlinglegends.ca, facebook.com/curlinglegends, and you can also subscribe on any of the many apps that you can get podcasts onto your smartphone. Thanks again to Jerry Gertz and Curling Zone for supporting the show, and thanks again to Steve Lobel for the artwork and Mark Rogman who provided the music. Cathy King was born in Winnipeg, although she never threw a rock there. At the age of 5, her and her family moved to Edmonton, and eventually she took up the game along with the rest of her siblings, 4 brothers, and curling became a family event, where following games, the family would sit around the dining room table and talk about shots that were called and strategy. And Cathy played a lot of sports, but she certainly found great success at curling. Her brothers Robb and Chris won the 1974 Canadian Schoolboy Championships, and then 3 years later, Cathy won the Canadian Junior Women's in 1977, and then again in 1978. But success at the next level wouldn't come for a few years, as Cathy got married and had 3 boys of her own. Eventually, as her boys aged, and into the early 90s, she started focusing more attention on the game and finally reaching a Scotties in 1995. At the time, she carried the last name Borst, which was her husband's name, and that team didn't have high expectations, but they did manage to make a tiebreaker, won another tiebreaker, eventually lost in the Scotties final to Connie Laliberte of Manitoba. Cathy would win Alberta and make it to the Scotties 6 more times, including a win in 1998 when her team included a young Heather Godberson, now Heather Nedowan, playing third, Brenda Bomer at second, and Kate Horn at lead. And they would get a bronze medal in the World Championships that year. Cathy then found success at the senior levels, winning a Canadian Championship in 2012 and then a World Championship in 2013. She holds a distinct title of being the first and so far only Canadian skip in men's or women's to win a junior and a men's or women's and seniors Canadian championship. We had a great talk, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Here is my conversation with Cathy King. So let's start off by, so as I found out, like all great curlers, you were born in Winnipeg.
I know,
or you're from
Manitoba.
Manitoba.
Funny? How many people from Edmonton especially are from Winnipeg. But to be honest, I did not start curling there, so I don't know if you
Oh, you never even threw a rock in Winnipeg?
Never even threw a rock
Okay.
when I was...
But the genes are from Winnipeg.
I guess so.
So what did your parents do in Winnipeg?
My dad was a floor covering manager for W.G. McMahon Limited at the time. So he was working for them. Then he got moved to Edmonton to be their Western Regional Manager.
So how old were you at the time?
I think I was 5.
Oh, so do you even remember Winnipeg at all?
Well, I do, only for the fact that we had a cottage, and we actually still do have a cottage out there. My dad has one, and then Bruce and I have one too out in Lake Winnipeg there. So we go back every summer. But I remember more the lake than I do the actual living in Winnipeg. Moving when I was 5.
And so you moved to St. Albert then?
No, we moved to Edmonton.
Into Edmonton, yeah.
Yeah, lived there till I got married and then moved out to St. Albert.
Okay, at that point. So go back to when you moved here. Were your parents curlers at all then? Or
Yes. Yes, they were, both of them. My mother used to run the junior program, started at the Hillcrest Curling Club, which is even no more. That's turned into the Jewish Community Center. They went bankrupt and turned that into that. And then my dad used to play up until he was 90. He's 97 now. He played in a senior league now for many years. And he curled. My mother stopped curling, but ran the junior program, but he kept curling. So yeah, it was definitely.
So it was inevitable that you and your other siblings were going to curl. Was that part of it growing up?
Yes, so. I mean, I did lots of other things. I was involved in so many different sports, but I guess I took to curling because it was just kind of a natural thing in our family and everyone be going down that route. So I just followed the path.
So it was just one of many sports that you did?
Yes.
Yeah,
I did. Sport, yeah.
How old were you when you had kind of threw your first rock, do you think?
Well, I think it was around 11. I can't honestly remember that far back, but I'm pretty sure it was close to that. I remember, you know who Ron Anton?
Yeah.
You know, he was through the Hillcrest Curling Club too, and he was out, I guess, helping my brothers. I'm not sure why he was there, but anyways, my mother said, can you just sort of come and take a look at my daughter here? She's trying to learn how to curl, and right off the bat, I think he said to my mom, boy, she's going to be good. She's got great balance, already flat slider, and blah, blah, blah. I had no idea what all that meant. I just wanted to get out and slide.
Yeah.
Anyways, it turned out that I started to really love the game. I think, our family used to sit around the dinner table and do a lot of curling strategy talk.
Okay.
We'd have the board sitting there and there'd be a lot of discussion about...
So not at the club, this is back at home.
This is at home.
Okay. Yeah.
And there'd be a lot of discussion about strategy. And so I really got into the strategy end of things. And that's why I think I really love to skip.
Your two older brothers, they actually had some success. They reached the Nationals and won the Nationals in...
1974, I think it was. They
So
won.
how old would you have been at that point then? Were you just getting into it at that point?
Well, no, I was a little further along. That would have been high school for them, so I was probably just finishing junior high, maybe.
Now, so at that point, you'd seen them be successful. You were kind of on your way then in terms of those goals and aspirations.
Yes,
as a junior. Yeah.
I was really into watching them play, and I learned a lot from them actually. And I always thought my brother Rob was so cool. He was such a cool customer as far as throwing the last rock and calling the game, and their team was amazing. They had the best sweepers ever, like Bill Follis and my brother Chris King, just amazing sweeping with that corn broom. Like they were, every time you go out and see any of the...
And everybody in Edmonton at the time was corn broom, right? Unlike we're down in Calgary at a couple of like the Winter Club and a couple other spots, they were using push broom. Even at that time, I think, even kind of the early 70s.
Maybe just starting.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it was... no one had seen a push broom around Edmonton, but...
No, yeah.
Anyways, the rink rats were... It was so much fun to sweep with a rink rat because it was like so loud, the whole place would echo this slapping of this broom because it was not like the corn brooms, right? They were just loud, and then they finally got rid of those.
Well, okay, so you mean the rink rats sort of had an era and then went away, or what really happened to them? Because I remember having one or two in our basement, and it was before I started playing, but I remember banging them around on the cement floor. But what really happened?
Yeah,
you
know what? I think it went from what I remember. We were using the corn brooms, and then we went into the rink rats and those kind of foamy things. And
there was the other ones that weren't really a rink rat; they were kind of like one tube. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then from there, we went to start using the beavers, and they had the flapper in the middle, which made the slapping noise. But and then I think from there we went to the push brooms, right? After that. But it was kind of crazy going through all. And I can't even believe that we were playing like 10 ends a day, three games a day at our national championships, using those things, and our hands were just complete blisters. Even me as a skip was where I'd have blisters on my hands, and my poor front end completely taped up everywhere because they're just...
Well, you're all juniors. You're not, you're still growing and developing, and most people aren't. So how effective was sweeping, I guess, at that point in juniors that you remember?
Honestly couldn't tell you. I don't know if we slowed the rock down more or not, because when I think about it, when we played later on and we played mixed and used some corn brooms, we'd actually use the corn broom to slow us down, to slow the rock down, because because the corn would be flying everywhere. But I guess we thought we were doing something because we'd get out there and go crazy and try to sweep the rock in. But I really don't know how effective.
And were you always a skip then, like right from the beginning?
No. I played, I started out playing front end, I guess, and maybe went to third pretty quickly. But I think I can't even remember what year I started skipping. Maybe I don't even want to tell you how many years ago that was. But I did go into skip fairly soon after because the girls that were ahead of me had moved on to another age group maybe, and I kind of had to start. Okay,
and it was high. Now, how did the juniors work for women's? Was it similar to men's? It was sort of a high school rink. You had to be on a team, or no? It was very different.
No, it was not high school. I don't know why. They only had high school boys.
Really?
Yes. The girls you had to belong to the same club to curl together. So we were all out of the Hillcrest, and then once that went under, we moved on to the Crestwood.
Okay.
So
but like you say, your brothers, and I think it was around that time. If I remember, Paul Galzo mentioned that his first Canadians, they had to be in the same high school, and then by 77, you didn't have to be in the same high school. But that's when it changed for him. So I don't know, maybe at your stage, it was kind of, you were just coming in at that time, right?
Right. So, but there was no high school curling. No, I don't know.
But your brothers played high school.
My brothers played high school curling.
They had like a high school coach, probably, right? A little kind of, or
Dick Manless and Peter McNabb. They were from Rochep.
So did you have coaching?
Well, I guess my mom might have coached, but then Dick Manless actually started coaching our junior women's team after he sort of finished with the boys, and we had lots of success with Dick, and he had some good strategy tips, etc. So yeah, he was really good for us.
Was there a lot of opportunity to play then in juniors around that time? Like, were there bonspils you could play in? Did you have to play against the women's or the men's, or how did you have to? How did you get the competition?
Played both. There was lots of junior spiels around and lots of junior mixed spiels even. I can remember playing with Mark Johnson lots of times. We had lots of fun playing it. So yeah, there was a lot of competition. Even in our play downs, we had like 30 teams coming out of the city. Like, it was crazy trying to get out of the city zones. Now they don't even have them because there's not enough teams.
Yeah, and that was just junior.
That was junior, yeah. And then from there, you'd go into your northern, of course, for 16.
So it was still like that. So it was very similar to the way the northern. So there was always sort of that Nakasaka design, even in the junior.
There was, and then the provincials was around Robin back then. You had to play every team.
So getting there was a big event just to get there.
It was really tough to get out of the city. There's a lot of good teams. But it was funny now when you think about it. Like,
Well, so the first year you won, was that the first year you actually got to provincial? Was in 77, I guess? Or had you been there previously?
I think it was the first year I got to provincials.
Yeah.
Can't remember.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look at some of our zone crests and that because I can't remember, but I think it was. But after we got some coaching through Dick and we practiced a lot.
Did you?
Yeah, we did.
Was that common then? Was that starting to happen where a lot of the teams would do that, or?
I don't think so.
No?
I think we were really, we were probably the exception. And then I hate to say it the way I am, but we really did dominate the junior curling back then. And, even through our juniors, zones and cities and stuff. And even when we got to Canadians, first year we went, it was 10 games. And so we won the first 9. We'd already won it because there was no...
Oh, it was just set up like a round, like the Brier was back then.
Yes. So we'd already won it. So we went out and had a few too many, I guess, came back and lost our next game. And then the next year we went 10-0. And there was no junior worlds back then, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it, because it wasn't
there. So it didn't really
matter
you at all?
Yeah,
or?
No, but now when I see all these people coming out, oh yeah, junior world champ here and there, I go, geez, I bet you we could have been too, being that we were pretty domineering in our...
So let's go back then. Was it largely that other teams just weren't working at the game the same way you guys were? Is that a big part of it? You just felt like that you guys...
Maybe at the national level, the teams might have been, but I don't know how many teams back then had coach practice that much.
Like there was a lot, like you say, there were a lot of teams playing, and it was sort of, but in the same way they would just participate in other recreational sports. So was there a point then, like was there an age where you went, okay, now, this year I'm giving up everything else and curling is it, and I'm focusing on, and I have goals in mind. Like, did that happen maybe, after your brothers won in 74? Or
no, because I was still playing all the other
You still
sports.
did everything else, yeah.
I I still remember running from the SportX, playing in zones, having to go play in the city final championships in volleyball. I was like, come on, Mom, we got to get there. You know, they already had finished one of the games out of 5, and I was freaking out playing. So no, I still played lots of sports. I'm probably up until after high school, right? Then you kind of get out of a lot of that stuff. But
so even as much time as you were devoting to curling, you found other time for volleyball or other
fastball. Played a lot of fastball up until I was about 23. Made a couple Canadian championships that I went to there. And
so with the family, because there's mostly boys, right? Like there's
yes. Grew up with mostly 4 brothers.
So was it a lot of sports growing up, and was that? Do you think what?
I guess so, but I probably played more than any of them.
Did you really?
I did, yeah. I mean, I have a twin brother, and him and I were probably the busiest out of the 4 of us playing sports. But the guys, the 2, Robb and Chris, were doing mostly curling. Yeah.
Yeah. And
although Robb was also a Canadian champion motocross racer, he used to race motorbikes a lot. So
now that's something you don't see. You don't see motocross and curling.
No,
too much,
not
right?
really.
Yeah.
We didn't do any golf back then, so we couldn't. It wasn't that kind of a summer sport.
Just didn't do golf, or it was just
no. I didn't take up golf till many years later. I was probably like 35 when I started golfing.
Sometimes that's a blessing. It depends on how you feel about it.
I think it was more because when you're raising a family, you have no time and you have no money. So I really didn't start curling or golfing till many years later.
Well, that's partly why I'm thinking it. As someone who's golfed since they were 7 years old, if I think about the amount of hours that I've spent golfing, I could have learned many instruments. Perhaps I'd be a medical doctor. I might have invented something new.
That's right.
It's possible I could have done many more important things. Maybe I'd have more podcasts. Who knows? But yeah, golfing is a time-consuming vice for sure. But
now I can spend the time to golf.
So did you, so take me through a practice then. Like, was there a certain kind of way that you practice or something you guys kind of took from, or like, how did you?
I seem to remember doing a lot of at that point was trying to make sure your slide was straight. Mm-hmm. So we used to set up the rocks to have to slide through things like that.
You did
now
the sliding
they have pylons,
through the rocks.
But back then we had rocks, and so if you hit the rock, you knew you were in trouble because you were hurting yourself. But no, it was a lot of that. And just really working on our releases to make sure that we were throwing them clean and not playing with our handles and stuff. So it just kind of a lot of the same stuff now, but I guess now we have more of the little games you play, like trying to do the figure eights and hit the rocks and make sure you all stay in, or try to throw the rocks so you all line up on the center line. Those are things that came later. We didn't have all those different games that you played to practice, but they're all great for helping to make sure that you're doing things good.
It sounds like you say the strategy piece really kind of interested you. That was a big part of it.
Yes, I think, and even to this day, like I love watching, the Brier and the Scotties now, and trying to figure out, what I call the same shot as them. And Bruce always has to laugh because I'll say something, and then Russ will say it exactly right after I will. And he says, how do you always say exactly the same thing? And I said, well, it's just curler talk and knowing that, I know the game, so I pretty well know what I think they're going to say or call.
Now, mind you were a junior, so, I mean, I remember back in juniors, nobody made all the right calls. Was there a moment where you remember getting off the ice and your mom or dad was just shaking their head because you'd done something? Like, I've heard stories of guys, 4 up, and the coach comes out on the ice and says, okay, I want you to peel everything, and then the very first shot, he puts up a center guard.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing.
You learn from mistakes, right? Yeah. That's how you get better. So, of course, I made lots of mistakes away. And even to this day, sure, I'll make mistakes. But sometimes now, it's, especially in senior curling, you play to your team's strengths. And it may not be the right call out there, but you're playing to knowing what your team can make now.
Oh, really?
It is different, let me tell you. So
you're playing around the odd miss or more half shots than you might have seen originally? Yeah.
So,
well, plus as a skip, if you make the last shot, it makes a whole lot of strategy decisions irrelevant if you make the shot, right?
Well, and plus you got to look and say, okay, what do I want to be left with? You have to look at what the ice conditions are, and if it's running dead straight, if you got to be drawing around something, it might be tough. You got to be tapping instead.
We'll talk about, so you came up and developed then your formative strategy through the 70s and in juniors, right? And the women's game through that era a lot of times was different than the men's in terms of the amount of aggression, right? A lot of times it would be, we're going to play it simpler, there was more hitting a lot of the times.
Yes.
I mean, Colleen's game and even Connie Laliberte's game was very much, where I recall in Manitoba, and sometimes to a fault. Was that kind of a style that you still adopted, or did you take a different approach, or what? How did you?
I think we probably started out that way, and we were pretty good hitters, I think, especially in juniors, and then into ladies. I think we got a little more aggressive, maybe after getting into my second half of the 2000s when we were going to the Scotties. It maybe got a little more aggressive.
Did you see the game change? Like, did you see the women's game change?
Yeah.
And it wasn't really sudden, I don't think, was it? Or just...
I think teams like Jennifer Jones coming in, they were a pretty aggressive team. I think it did change. I don't know which team made it change, but I think some of the shots that some of the skips even nowadays, like it's amazing how aggressive some of the women's teams are out there. You've got the Sweeting team and Jennifer team, and even watching the Scotties this year, probably one of the best Scotties ever. It was fantastic, the shots being by her.
To a large extent, back when you were coming up, I think and maybe I'm thinking back to a lot of the men's teams or junior men's teams probably played the same way too, right? Hit a lot of things.
I think so.
Keep things simple when they could. I mean, Galzo might have been a bit of an exception. So did you know the Calgary contingent a little bit back then, coming up through juniors? Because that's around the same time. Yeah.
They had one of their, I think, Canadian championships in Edmonton.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
We were at that party that they trashed.
The famous party at the what was the just no longer here, but
no, I know, but that we were there. No, that was.
Well, I heard everybody was at that party actually.
It was a lot of fun.
Paul mentioned, yeah. Okay.
But you're right. But you have to remember, back then there was no free guards. It started out with 3 rock rule and eventually 4 rock rule. So I think that alone changed the game for having to be aggressive. So you have to go with the game, how it's changing, and play along with it. So
take me through that first juniors then. So even through provincials, your team was pretty strong, and that was the team with Robin, right? With
Robin Slack played third for me, and my good friend Maureen Olson was second, and Mary Kay James was my lead then. And so we were. I don't think we lost any games in all the way through zones or provincial.
Just until you had that one late night at the Canadian, when you already had it.
It wasn't even a late night; it was an afternoon. It was awful. I can't believe. I don't even think were we of age, mate. No, we probably weren't.
Yeah, and you guys were out in New Brunswick. So was that the furthest east you'd been? I would imagine at that point, at that age.
It was. We had lots of fun. Wally Urslack was there. He wasn't our coach at the time, but he knew lots of people and took us out, had big dinners with people that he knew down there. We had lobster dinners. Yeah. It was fabulous. Yeah, we had a great time. And
they ran at that time, the junior women's and junior men's were 2 different events, right? So what do you remember of the event itself then? Was it
it's a big curling rink back
how many years
down
had it been running for at that point? Even having a Canadian championship, it wasn't that old, was it, for women, for the juniors?
It had been going on for a while.
Had it? Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know what year it started, but there was, we played, I think, at the Thistle St. Andrews or something like that in St. John's. And I just remember it was just a marathon of curling. We had a few 3-game days, and it was tough. It's tough. We had.
Why would you play 3 games in a day if it's a round robin though? Were they really trying to squeeze it into?
I guess so. I don't remember I don't remember the schedule, but we had
those were
several
10,
different
were they 10s
outfits
or 12
that we had to women. They had the outfits. We had white pants. Can you believe it? We wore white pants for some of our games.
Well,
we
it was
had white, red, and blue.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
was our pants when we had.
Did they have bell bottoms,
sweater.
Or they were just? No.
I don't remember, but we played some tough games. Connie Laliberte was in it.
Okay,
Colleen Jones was in it.
Oh yeah,
Cathy Cunningham was there. There was quite a few of the ones that are that I've even played in seniors already that were in juniors. Yeah. I think last year in our seniors there was 5 of us that had played juniors against each other.
Really?
Can you believe that? How many years later we're still curling against each other? But it was a lot of fun. It was always well run, and it was just, I remember it being a marathon of being really tired, just so much sweeping going on there. I mean, I'm only skipping yet, but I'm watching my front end players, and they were just dead after playing 3 games in a day. So pretty tough.
And then following year, like you say, same kind of run, but we had a different team though, because I'm assuming was there some graduation then at that point? So you had, okay.
Yeah. We had
so then,
both my lead and my third were moved up to the next level. So we, again, had Maureen Olson, still one of my best friends, she played second, and we added Brenda Oko and Diane Bose, and had some good success there. I remember that Canadian Championship, a lot of sickness going through every team.
Oh, okay. Like at the event itself.
Yeah. And we had one of our players, I think Diane, went down for a couple games. So then we were playing with three. So it was a little bit of a struggle just trying to get through people being healthy. And there was, a few teams that were quite sick. We had, at that point, you could bring in spares. So
like a local spare type thing? Okay.
Local. Anyways.
And that was in Chilliwack, that one. That was in BC.
That was in Chilliwack.
So did you pull some people out of the stands then, or did you end up
we played with three.
Did you? Yeah. But they probably gave you an option. They had a spare plane.
Yeah. You might have even got to be able to just take a sweeper, I think.
Okay.
We might have done that. But it was pretty good. We had some really close games in that competition, and some good teams that we played against, and it was great to finish that.
With your brothers getting one and you got two, did that leave you with sort of a sense of
oh yeah,
any kind of bragging rights? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They'd say to my brother, after I used to be Robb King's little sister, but then changed. Oh, you are Cathy King's brother.
Yeah.
So it was pretty funny. They handled that pretty good, though. They were pretty proud of me.
So was that your last year of junior? Your eligibility?
Yes, we were 18 at stopped back then, and we had to go into ladies. And I'm trying to remember if I did go right into ladies the next year. I might have taken a year off. I don't remember.
Were you kind of burnt out from curling?
Yeah, it was a little bit. But we did get to the 1980 provincial championships, I bet, and we were close to. We think we played in the final of that.
Oh yeah,
for ladies down in Calgary.
Now, was that common at that time that like a young junior team would come right out and have success? No. And
then we'd play in the Spiel. There was a big Spiel here in Edmonton. Can't think of the name of it, but something gold. I don't remember the name of it right now. But all the big curlers from Alberta played in that, women. And remember beating Betty Cole just juniors, and she was like, you know how competitive Betty Cole is. She is so upset at losing to a junior team. And I, as a lady playing back then and having two teams play us back, I know exactly what she's feeling like, killing these kids, But we were a bit back then. So anyways.
Were you still spending time at the game, like the practice and the focus as a young women's team?
I think so, up until about, the time when I got married when I was 23. So yeah, it's pretty focused for up till about then. And then all of a sudden, you get married and then you're doing other things and then the kids start coming. And then, so yeah, there was.
So were you still playing socially at all, or still curling a little bit? Or did it really become, now I'm going to walk away from it entirely for now?
I didn't walk away from it, but I was playing, and I wouldn't say I was playing socially, but I really wasn't spending as much time at the game anymore. I was busy doing other things. So we played in it was probably still a super league of some sort, but didn't play many spiels. And
did you get disappointed when you lost, or you kind of just shrugged your shoulders and went, I'm not.
Well, if anyone
how did you feel
knows
about it?
Me, I'm such a competitive person. Yeah. Yes, I was probably always mad when I lost, but I just. I had to, I had other things going on, so I just did the best I could with what we're doing, I guess.
Yeah.
So
and then you had how many kids? You had
3 boys.
3 boys, yeah. A lot of boys in your genetics then.
Isn't that something? I know. I thought, how did I end up with 4 brothers and then 3 sons? I was just like, oh well.
And did you get them into curling, or what?
A couple of them tried it for a while, but they were kind of doing their own thing. My middle son played lacrosse for a long time, and then my older son he did a bunch of sports, but he was more of the artsy kind. So he went off and was doing more of the drama and things like that. And he's actually ended up being he's an actor, I guess. Okay. He's gone into acting school. So that was his love. And then my youngest son was doing soccer and things like that. So yeah, they kind of didn't.
So you never really kind of.
I didn't push them into that.
And were you playing? And you weren't playing that much at the time, like you say. You did play downs, I assume.
Played, but I wasn't. I didn't practice much.
So past 1980, throughout the 80s, did you have any appearances in the provincials, or was it? More...
I did. I think maybe in around 87, maybe. There was a couple times in there. A couple times I showed up like 6 months pregnant, still playing. Wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But
so your boys were curlers. They just didn't know it yet.
That's right. When I finally did get back and they were young, they'd be riding the rocks with me when I'd be practicing. That was their practice. They'd jump on the rocks and slide down the ice.
Yeah.
But no, I guess there was maybe up till about 87. I kind of maybe was playing a little more then. We went to Japan with LaDawn Funk and Robb and Chris and another girl. And we ended up playing in a men's spiel.
Oh, okay.
And
that was in the 80s and then around the...
It was actually, you know what? It was 1990 because I had just had... My son was maybe 8 months old. And I had a chance to go. One of the teams that was supposed to go, like maybe Brad Hanna or something, they backed out at the last minute. So Wally says, do you guys want to come? And I think he gave us like 10 days notice.
Yeah.
Like it was hardly any, I'm still nursing my son. And I said, I don't think I can do this. And then my mom and dad were going, you're going, you're going to go. You've got this chance to go to Japan. You're going to go. So somehow we managed to work it. It played in a men's spiel. It was 15 men's team and our team.
Yeah.
And we ended up winning this men's spiel.
Really?
We won it over in Japan.
Yeah. And so what were the teams from?
It was Hokkaido we were playing in, and they had the teams that we were playing against were like some of their top men's teams that were going to be playing at the Worlds.
Okay, yeah.
So they were pretty embarrassed.
Well, and because that's Japanese culture as well, right?
Oh, yeah. They were pretty embarrassed.
So was that the last time a women's team was invited to play in the men's Bonspiel in Japan?
I don't think there was ever a women's team ever went back. So we ended up, but the funny thing, we ended up winning a hotel night stay, which we couldn't use, 50 kilos of scallops, which we couldn't bring home.
Yeah.
And a plane trip to Sapporo, which we couldn't use. So we had to pretty much give it all back. Anyways, it was a trip of a lifetime, and we had a ball there, and we had just some great memories. I've got lots of video still from that time we went. And actually, I've been to Japan 3 times to curl in different spiels. We were there as Team Canada the year that we were Team Canada from winning the Scotties. It was 1999. We had gone January, I think, because we didn't go into play down, so we went to Japan, and we ended up winning that spiel. It was called the commemorative spiel in Nagano. That's Sandra had won.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the next year back, they sent our team. We won that spiel. And then I went another time playing with Don Waltuck. I was playing third, and Jules Ochar was playing second, and Lonnie McDonald. I don't even know why we were going. I think, again, somebody backed out. Kevin Martin, I think, couldn't make it, so they sent a mixed team.
Okay.
And we won.
Yeah.
It was just...
So you've won every time you've gone to Japan for a month?
Every time we won.
Okay.
Yeah.
You really should put that in the regular circuit then. You should be going to Japan every year.
I know. And
guaranteed win.
I don't think we'd have a chance.
Mind you, I don't know that based on the prize pool, it doesn't sound like it's maybe worth the entire event unless you have good sponsorship, because I don't know if you can sell your scallops for the flight home. Yeah.
But no, they were always in different parts of Japan, so it was really interesting to get a chance to go over and see the different culture.
Well, in 1990 in particular, what was curling like in that area?
Well, they were just kind of getting going.
Yeah.
As I say, we played in Hokkaido, a small little town of Koro, and they were trying to get their province and people of Japan to put more money into the game at that point. That they were trying to, and we were promoting the game, I guess, coming over there. So yeah, they now, I don't know how many clubs they have now, but definitely a lot more than the one they had then. So, and I think the funny part for us out of that whole trip, and this is kind of a funny thing, but it was the toilets. They had all these different toilets everywhere. Some were the ones on the ground, and some had the plastic wraps that used to go around. And we were so fascinated by all the different toilets. It was a funny thing. Oh, yeah. Anyways, we had lots of fun over there, and we met so many people and became friends with a lot of people. Wally Ursulak would bring them back and meet up again and take them out to curling and work, trying to teach them more about the game.
Well, let's take a quick aside on that. So how do you feel about that? Because some people get all up in arms when we help other countries curl for some reason, and I've never really understood that, because I think it's ultimately good for everyone if you grow the sport, right? And there have been, Wally's in particular, but there's been lots of people that have gone overseas.
Oh, yeah.
Now that it's Olympics, people seem to get a little more sensitive to this. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people are, wondering why we're helping other countries when we should be helping ourselves. But no, I actually think it's good for our sport. I think it's sort of like in, the women's hockey, how Canada and U.S. dominate that.
And
like,
they just play each other all the time.
It seems like, it's boring just watching those two teams win, playing each other in the finals all the time, where I think now that the other countries have really come up and are making some great strides in curling, it's great to see some of the different countries winning the world championships now. Like, and it's in women's curling, it's pretty tough to win the world championship now. The men, maybe, I don't know, maybe we still dominate a little bit, but it's tough for the women's curling to win.
Well, I think it's a quite, I don't know about dominate. I don't think the word dominate exists anymore ultimately in international curling. I think that it comes down to, who's a favorite, who's likely to win. And I do think, if you look at, say, the top 20 teams in the world, right? So I think if you go back to the 70s and the 60s, and with a lot of the people I've talked to about international curling, the top 20 teams in the world were all in Canada, right? For the most part. Now we're at a stage where that's not the case, right? It's fascinating, and I think it's likely driven by the Olympics and the focus on that, although I'm sure that it was already improving even ahead of the Olympics. So so the Olympics came to Calgary, right, in 88. So did you have, so at the time when you found out about that, where were you at? Because it sounds like that was just before you were pregnant. So you weren't really kind of back focused in the game again yet.
No, and I wasn't, it was funny because I was a little, I don't know what the word was, maybe a little ticked off that I never even got an invite.
Yeah. Well, how did it work at that? Well, because they had the camps, right? Yeah. There was a camps.
You get invited to the camps, and I'm thinking, geez, I was a two-time Canadian champion. I never even got an invite. Yeah. But maybe it was sort of, what have you done for me lately? So that I could sort of see, maybe that's what the issue was. I hadn't really gone to any, maybe I had been to one provincial in that time, but anyway.
Well, and what was the bonspiel circuit like for women at that time as well, right? In the 80s?
Not much. You had your local spiels and things like that, but there wasn't like
because the men had a not bad little cash circuit where you could go to Thunder Bay and there were some good bonspiels that had some fairly decent cash, right? At the time.
We had the big Calgary spiel that we went to all the time, and then there was always the one in Saskatoon too. But until you actually maybe got some sponsorship money, you really stayed close to home and didn't go too far. So I guess maybe back, I'm trying to think when I actually started doing more bondspieling, maybe 93, 94.
Okay. Like when did you say, when was it sort of September's rolling around and you went, okay, this is the year, I'm refocusing everything. My family's started, I'm ready. Or were you kind of always doing that and just maybe didn't have the time and effort? Like in terms of being able to make the time commitment?
I think it probably more was like 93, 94. 94 probably was when I finally said, okay, we had a great coach, Daryl Horn, and his wife, Kate, was curling lead for us. And he got us focused into thinking of the right things when we're on the ice and having a lot more practicing and things like that. So,
and when did you start playing with Heather?
Not till 97.
Okay. So literally, so you're getting, so who was that team when you started getting a little more serious?
So 94, I think when I played third for Maureen Brown. And I think we lost I don't know if it was Northerns or I don't even think we made provincials. And so then the next year we switched it up. So I played third. I played skip.
Yeah.
She played third. And I think might have had the same, I know Kate was still with us. I might have had a different second. Anyways, so we swapped it up. And then we were in provincials. And that's the year Gloria Palinkas won. There was Cheryl Bernard and Brink and ourselves and Deb Santos and all the, pretty strong teams were there. And LaDawn Funk, she beat LaDawn in the final. And LaDawn actually, unfortunately, missed her last shot to win. But the ice was so bad. It was...
And was this in a club? Or
it was in a curling club up north. I can't remember exactly where we were playing. But yeah, we were all flashing left and right with ice just falling right off,
That's disappointing, especially in a provincial championship. That's in 90, what was that,
94.
Or 90, yeah. By then I think, you'd hope that people would gotten past this idea that, well, it's the same ice conditions for everybody. But I think a lot of that still existed, right? The idea that it didn't have to be.
It evens the field out, let me tell you.
For sure.
When you've got some teams there that are maybe a little weaker, and it showed. She went 1-10 in the or 1 in 11, whatever, and 1 in 10 in Canadian championships.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next year we went and we won, and they based our record on her record. We ended up playing that marathon 5 games in 27 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the team prior was, the record was, she was lower than any of the other teams that were in the playoffs, Alberta. So we ended up having to play out the tiebreak. Like we are all tied with, I think, 8-3, I think is what it was.
Okay.
So instead of doing the draw to the, now they do the shootout, right? Mm-hmm. To find out who actually comes second.
Yeah, through the week or whatever. Yeah. So what was it back then? So then
we had to play them all again. So that's when I think we had a game in the morning.
Well, how many? Okay, so take me back to that then. So that was where again? That was in?
That was in Calgary. So we played a game in the morning, and then we had a game in the afternoon. So we had an afternoon game, an evening game. Then we had the tiebreaker game at 10 o'clock at night. Then we had to be back on the ice at 8 in the morning, and then we played Sandra Schmirler at noon. So, and Sandra was, I think they beat us then. So we ended up, I think, third or something. Yeah. So we ended up having to play them in the semifinal. And it was her three-peat that we ended up beating her for. She was going on to represent Canada or to be the Canadian champion for the third time. And so we beat her in a wild game. That game, I have vertigo.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so
is it something you'd had before?
Never.
So you weren't even really familiar with the sensation or what was
No, it started the game before, but I didn't really know what was going on. I just thought I was tired.
And this is your first Scotties, right?
First Scotties.
First one? Yeah.
So I ended up with this vertigo, and I didn't know what was going on because I couldn't even see the rock coming down the ice. It was like cross-eyed or something. I thought, how am I going to play? Like I can hardly even see the broom, right? So I don't know. I just went out there and I said, I'm just going to wing it. I just have to try my best and really try to focus when I'm sliding out of the hack. I guess I must have had a good feel because I played 94%, I think, in that game.
Maybe you almost slowed yourself down and didn't get ahead of yourself.
I have no idea how, but as soon as the game was over,
could you see the broom at the other end, really?
I just remember I sort of had to just know I could see it, but it was like if you've ever had vertigo, you're dizzy. And you feel like you've got no balance.
So how can you curl?
I don't know.
In particular, in a Canadian Nationals.
I have no idea.
And this was the semifinals?
Semifinal.
Okay, and this is after you'd played all of these successive games?
I think that's what happened. I was just so worn out. So we ended up, I jumped the boards after a game and went immediately to the emergency there and went to see a doctor about what can I take for this vertigo. Because I mean, I couldn't play like that anymore. Yeah. Anyways, they gave me some kind of medication, but they said this will not get rid of it, but it'll stop it from getting any worse.
And is it something you've had since?
Yes, I have.
So the first thing that triggered it was this sort of wild turn of playing all of these successive games, because this is the same time when you were playing. You had to play the night. This was the big tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you came out of that, and then
Then we had to play Connie and Laliberte the next day in the final. And it was a little better the next day. I don't know what changed, but I stopped going in the elevator because the elevator made me feel sick. The up and down. Yeah. Your equilibrium in your ears. It all of that caused a problem. I don't know. Anyways, yes, I have had it since. I had it in our provincials just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in Dawson Creek. The same thing happened. I went, okay, this is weird.
Did you curl 94%?
No. I don't know, but we won.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I thought, maybe it's just something in my middle ear.
So how was that first experience in 95 though, that kind of first Scotties? Was
amazing.
It like, did part of you go, I can't believe it's taken me this long to get here? Or did you just kind of accept that, your curling life had been put on hold by many other things?
Yeah, I think.
Because that's like, you think about you'd been a Canadian in 78 and here you are 17 years later. Right.
I guess there had been a couple times in between where I thought we might have a chance at getting to the Scotties. But, when I look back, I thought, well, you know what? I really didn't put the time and effort into it. So how could I have expected any less than and not winning. But, once
But you'd still be mad when you lost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Of course. So
Yeah.
I guess, it took a coach to get us back on track and get us practicing and getting...
What do you find that coaching seems to have been more prevalent in the women's game than the men's? Is it just that maybe women are more accepting of the concept and recognize that there's value?
Better. Don't you know that?
Well, maybe that's, I don't know. Like it just, there's a willingness to be open to ideas versus, because, traditionally, particularly in the men's game, I think that's changing a bit, but the idea of someone that's going to coach you was kind
the
of...
men use their coach different for, scouting rocks, for scouting teams, for things like that, more so than some of the women's teams.
Well, so what was your process with coaching then?
Well, we used Daryl for every part of it. Like he helped us with the strategy. He helped us with making sure our team was communicating properly out there, and communication between the front and back end. Of course, is if you watch any of the Scotties and Brier, that they're hugely communicating. And if you're not, you're going to run into problems. So I think that part of it was really big for our coach to get us working with that. Just team dynamics things. It was great. And we ended up using some sports psychology along the way. And I think when we finally did win in 98, we did have some sports psychologists.
I was trying to remember that final in 95.
Connie, Laliberte?
Yeah, I was trying to remember it.
We lost on the last rock. We were tied up going without.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I hit half a rock and it was rolling out and it caught the frost in the 12-foot. It was actually a pretty well-curled game.
Yeah.
I think I remember having to make the perfect freeze in my second shot of the game, and otherwise she's getting a deuce on us. But I remember it was a pretty well-curled game up until I don't think I threw the rock hard. I probably throw it harder now for peels than I did then, but I was trying to roll out on my last one in 9 and stuck somewhere over on the 12-foot after it didn't roll out. But
did you surprise yourself in that you did that well there at your first time, or you?
Yeah, I think I did, because our team was pretty green. Like no one had been to a Scotties.
Yeah.
I mean, that was maybe a couple provincials, but that was it. Maureen hadn't played in many. Maybe she had been to a provincials before too, but really not much as far as that goes. So it was pretty scary, actually. I was really scared. We
Really?
did go 1-10 too.
Yeah. Really? You'd had all that success, but that was just so many years before, and
Yeah,
it was
but
juniors,
one
and it was
person
different.
doesn't make a team, right? You got to have 4 people on board. So we won a lot of games on Lost Rock.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was, as Katie...
So it was a precarious 8-3, is what you're saying.
But that's the kind of game we played, though. We played it simple. We didn't get into any major, lot of rocks in play. That's just the kind of game I knew that my team could play. Yeah. And as Kate would say, she'd always hear the track camera coming over to our sheet, because we were always in the extra end going over top of our heads.
So you got extra TV time then, really? Yeah.
It seemed like we were last rock or extra end all the time, and I guess got used to having to throw under that pressure. But
so now that you got to the Scotties, it seemed like at that point you kind of got a taste for it, and it seemed like this became almost a bonspiel for you for a few years, right? Like you had
because we ended up in that was 95, 96. We lost the final to Cheryl on last rock in the provincials. And then we went 97, 98, 99, back to back to back. That's when Heather came on board, and we had Brenda Bomer playing second. Pretty strong team.
And Heather was just right out of juniors, or was she? Okay, so was that like, how did that go then? What was a
good
recruiting thing gone, or was it like I guess, how did the team get developed at that point? Was it a case of changing things up, or? Yeah,
I think Maureen had sort of made the decision that she didn't really want to put that much work and be away that much. So she said, I just can't be doing that. She was working and things like that. So then we looked at saying, okay, well, let's think of who we could replace her with. And then Heather was coming out of juniors, and I had a chat with her when I watched her play in her junior final out at Leduc, maybe, and had a chat with her and said, if I want to throw this out there, maybe you're interested in coming to play third for me. And she'd already been asked by, I think Deb Santos had asked her too. So she had to make the decision of where she wanted to play, and she phoned me up and said, yeah, I'd come play, and worked really well for the most part. And maybe by the last year, I could sort of feel that difference of her maybe wanting to get back into skipping. So
it was a 3-year run then.
3-year run.
Guys, yeah.
So she went on to skip, and then I ended up getting another new player. I think it was Lonnie McDonald came and played with us, and then we played in the 2001 trials together, and then we went on to go to the Scotties in 2002. Didn't fare so great. I don't think we made playoffs back then, but
Now, what was it like? So when because there's a gap between you and Heather at this point, right? She's just fresh out of juniors. That's that didn't have an issue at all, or was there? Did she?
No, we got along great, actually.
Yeah,
we had a lot of fun together. We were roommates, and she was always making some great shots. Probably the top out there.
So who was the one trying to get to bed earlier the night before? Then it was usually, or was she the one that's saying, "Look, we got to curl in the morning, Cathy. It's time to."
I think we were pretty much on the same page.
So the age difference didn't matter. It was as long as you matched up socially, it was fine.
Yeah, no, I think it was fine. No problems there.
Yeah. Well, I think the men's game often gets kind of the moniker of, the wild partiers and, the Gowsels, but, and the Al Hackners, and the idea that you could carry the moniker of being the guy that stayed up all night and then curled the next morning and won, right?
That was my next team after a few years later.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, so do stories like that happen in the women's game and we just don't hear them? Is that what happens?
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in, I think, I'm trying to remember what year started, 1990, I can't even think now, 90,
those are the missing years.
Yeah, 2004 maybe? No.
Yeah.
No, I can't remember. But we got Tracy, I was going to take the year off. Mm-hmm. And then I got talked into, Christy Moore asked me to play. Could have been like 2003. Yeah, okay. Sure, it was 2003. And okay, fine. We got Christy Moore was playing, and Tracy Bush, never even heard of her. She came on board, and then I can't even remember, sorry, who my other player was. But we only lasted a year, and then we ended up switching it up.
We got to the Scotties, though, I think.
Laurie Olson, sorry.
Laurie
was playing. She started out playing with us. So then the next year, Christy Moore left us, and we got Raylene Rock on board. And so Raylene was second, Tracy Bush was lead, and Laurie was playing third. And yeah, those girls were the partiers. I'm not lying either. We had a lot of fun, though. We really did over the next few years that we played together. A lot of laughs, but yeah, I couldn't keep up to those girls.
Yeah. So at some point, it's just a different level that is maybe in your younger days it would have been okay.
Yeah,
even then.
You have to think about it. Yeah, I think I'm 17 years older than Laurie, and maybe 8 years older than Raylene. So yeah, they were quite a bit younger than me. And I said to those girls, I said, look, you guys, I said, I can't do the drinking and the curling. It just doesn't match one or the other. So anyway, somehow, those girls seem to manage to party it up pretty good.
So with your team in 98, then it was a little less, it was a little more focused.
We were.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kate and Brenda and Heather weren't drinkers either, so it was pretty easy to handle them. But
yeah, so was 98 was it kind of a magical year in some respects, or was it just even getting? Were there shots or games where you can look back and go, wow, you know what? We probably, if this happens or that happens, we don't win Canadian. Was there a few of those instances that you remember? Even
we lost one game.
Yeah.
In 98, and it was to the Northwest Territories, Kelly Kalo, who curled 95% against us, I must say, but we lost in an extra end against them. Otherwise, I think we were pretty domineering that year. Mm-hmm. We really did play well that whole Scotties and led the whole way.
And even getting there, like getting on a provincials, because
we
Alberta
were undefeated.
Because Alberta was tough. Alberta women's has generally been pretty strong, but in particular, right?
We were undefeated in provincials.
Yeah.
And we went undefeated, or lost the one game in nationals too. But my biggest fear, I think, in that year was having to play Ann Merklinger 3 times. Mm-hmm. Hard to beat a good team 3 times. Yeah. And they were a good team. And I think, I know what the last game was. I can't remember our first 2 games that we played to them. I think they all came down to last rock, but we ended up playing an extra end.
Well, let me ask you that, because you hear that a lot, right? And especially sports announcers. It's tough to beat a team 3 times, regardless of sport. They say that. Now, I'm a math guy, so I like to look at the analytics sides. But I recognize it's not all about numbers. But in truth, the odds of winning the third game should be the same as the first game, in theory, because it's really just a single game. What happened the last 2 games shouldn't matter. In fact, if anything, if you've just beaten a team twice, you might feel that you have them somehow, or there might be some reason or particular matchup, right? And in certain sports that can matter, right? Like, but did you actually feel, okay, maybe this gets harder? As long as the streak goes, it might be more difficult?
Well, I just, I think if you've played a team or play a team that's pretty equally matched to yours, pretty tough to beat them 3 times.
Do you just feel like they're due?
The odds.
Yeah.
Yeah, the odds are, like if you flip a coin 3 times, how many times are you going to get heads 3 times in a row or tails 3 times in a row?
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is once you've gotten heads twice, the odds the third time are the same.
Okay, yeah, right.
So it's not any harder the third time.
Yeah,
is all I'm saying. But it's
it's more
interesting.
Probably a mental thing, I guess.
Yeah. So going into it, did you actually think through it, or you could kind of put it out of your mind? I mean, it wasn't something that.
I probably wasn't. Once you get into the game, you're focused on the game. But I just remember it. It was a real battle out there. Yeah. I almost missed my last shot in the 10th end to go extra end even. So we had the hammer going into 11, and she left me a fairly simple shot. She was back 4, and I with a sort of a half guard around it, so I had to just draw the forefoot. And I guess I would have had a little bit of backing if I threw to the backing, because it wasn't quite on the center line. But
now when you're in the hack, because that's always a difficult shot, right? I have backing, but I don't want to think I have backing, right? Like, how do you process that in your mind?
No, I know. So my biggest thing was my adrenaline was just probably over the top. And I just had to say to myself, like, throw it lighter than you would normally throw it, because I know I probably felt like I was coming out really slow, but I probably wasn't. But my biggest thing is I was getting ready in the hack, and I didn't know this until someone told me after the game was over, but they focused in on my parents. And my mother was covering her eyes. She couldn't watch, and everyone started laughing.
Yeah.
And I'm in the hack ready to throw, and Katie said, stand up. So I stood up and had to sort of go through the whole routine again. And I thought, what's going on? Like, I was kind of freaked out a bit. What's happening? Because I didn't see what happened, what they were focusing on. But anyways, got back in the hack and got ready to throw again. But I'm sure my knees were just shaking like crazy.
To that point, this was the biggest shot you'd faced.
Oh, yeah.
That you could at any point, yeah. But clearly you'd made a lot of last rock shots. Just this had the momentum of it, and it's interesting because even just thinking about last night and watching and tough ice, frosty now, and you got these new brooms. That was probably one of the hardest draws to the 8-foot that you can imagine, right?
Oh,
that Brad Goucher had to make.
I can't. It's funny because when he's sitting in the hack ready to throw that, the feelings of me having to throw my last rock came back.
From that same moment in 98.
From that same moment. You got this to win a Brier, and I can just feel the excitement and adrenaline and trying not to think of what happens if you won. Like all you wanted to think about is the process of what you're doing, right? And trying to push all those other thoughts out of the way is tough. You're just thinking, okay.
So were there techniques? Like one thing you said is knowing to throw it soft.
Yeah. For me, that was my self-talk.
But is there anything else you could do? Could you draw on the fact that you'd had similar shots that were close to as important but not as important, so you could draw on that?
I guess so. I mean, it's just a matter of making sure you've calmed yourself down, taking some deep breaths, thinking about the process of the actual curling process and not anything else getting in the way.
Well, by this time you'd learned to golf, right? Had you started golfing?
Maybe.
Not quite. Because golf's all about that, right? It's like you think the ball's not moving. This should be so easy. But why is it so hard? Because the minute you start your backswing, you're thinking about everything. Too many thoughts.
Too many thoughts. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And a lot of times curling's like the curling delivery is it's like a golf swing in a lot of respects, right? Repetitive, just trying to make the same release, the same thing happen every time.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was trying to do, is just say, okay, just throw it softer than you'd normally throw, because you've probably got so much adrenaline coming out here and don't want to be. You want to use your sweepers. Because
you hadn't been to a Worlds before. You hadn't been allowed to. They didn't have one in juniors.
No, I know.
So this was your first.
In Canada.
In Canada. Yeah, because it was in...
Kamloops.
In Kamloops, okay.
Yeah, it was fun. We had lots of family come, and my kids all showed up. Although I was kind of at that time going through some marital problems, anyways, did that distract a little bit from? It was actually things at all. Or I found curling was actually the best thing for me. It would take my mind off of what was going on at home. But anyways, it seemed to manage to get through that, and we were probably a half an inch of being away from being in that final, because Elizabeth Gustafson we were playing her in the semifinal.
Yeah, I was trying to remember that because that was a high scoring game, right? And I was trying to remember.
The ice was wild. And so we ended up playing, we were playing in the 10th end, and I think we were down 2. And she had thrown a rock and she was going through the hole. She was not going to be touching anything. And somehow it touched it just enough to get it out of the rings by half an inch. And then we were going to be drawing for 3. Well, she obviously she got it out of the rings. And so we went to the extra end, and then we wanted to make her draw, and my guard overcurled by half a rock. So she hit it. Same thing. Hit sticks on the 12-foot. I'm thinking this is a bad memory.
And then you got to play in the bronze medal game. Which,
I don't think they had it then.
No?
I don't remember.
Was there a... Okay, because I...
Was there? No. I did
against
in,
Norway. You won 10-1.
Oh, okay. Was that game? Okay, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of another year. You're right. We played Norway. What's her name? Okay,
Doherty Norby.
Doherty Norby.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Yes, we did play her in the final, and we all said, okay, we came here for a reason, to get a medal, so let's go and give it our all. And that was like 7 a.m. No wonder I forgot.
Was it? It was at 7 a.m. in the morning.
We had to be on the ice at 7 a.m.
And you just lost this heartbreaking game the day before. Probably was the afternoon, I'm assuming, as well, right?
It might have been.
So the first thing you want to do is drown your sorrows. You've lost an extra end game in the World Championships, and then now you got to. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy times. Yeah. I'm going. That was like one of the first years they had that bronze medal game. So anyway, we were proud to at least come home with a medal.
So what's Doherty like?
Doherty? Yeah. We had a lot of fun with her. She's a real competitor. We used to laugh she'd use her broom like a sword out there, right?
Yeah.
But she was crazy. But great to curl against. Just had a great time curling against her.
So despite falling short of the gold medal, it was a great experience.
Oh yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. We had it just being in Canada, playing a Canadian World Championship was amazing. Like there's nothing you can ask for more than having your own fans there. So it was great fun. And I mean, people always said, don't you wish you could have gone, overseas and stuff? And I said, you know what? We didn't have to deal with the time change and the food and the ice. It was all great. So we were happy.
Yeah. When you got to go as Team Canada, you even mentioned you'd been to Japan before that, and then you had a couple other trips to Japan, and you had
Switzerland 3 times.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. So we really didn't need going overseas. I remember hearing about some of the other teams, like Colleen went a few times, and she had to go play overseas. It was kind of a nightmare for their ice.
Well, that's the big concern anytime, right? Is conditions.
Yeah.
Right. So as much as it's nice to have a trip to Europe, I guess, but if you're there and it's crappy ice conditions and it equalizes everything.
Well, you're not there to sightsee anyways, right? So what's the point?
Well, it's interesting. And you kind of went, if you think about that era and that time you went, I was actually kind of looking at the numbers. It was kind of interesting. From the beginning of the Women's World Championship, from 79 to 97, right? Canada won 10 of 19 golds, and they were in the finals 14 of 19 of those, right? So then the next 19 since 98, we've won, I say we, Canadian women,
yeah,
of which I'm, only, I guess, partially associated to Canadian, have won only 5, and actually have only been in the finals 9 out of 19 times, right? So you were kind of that era there, just as you were, and Doherty, I mean, she's had some amazing success. You were just kind of coming in as the international scene was changing and shifting, right? I mean, the Olympics at that point now
I think so.
And the Olympics, right, was Nagano, right? So it was just shifting. Yeah. So do you think, I mean, is it just, should we just safe to assume that's probably the way it's going to continue, and the rest of these countries are just better, and that's okay?
Well, you look at, I mean, yes, there's a lot of teams right now that spend a lot of time practicing, but I mean, you look at some of those teams from Korea and Japan and China, how much time they spend practicing. Yeah. Oh my Lord, it's crazy. Like the team that used to come and practice at the Saville there, that used to be part of our league many years ago, I think they were on the ice like 5 hours a day. Like
something you guys probably never did.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
I think mostly because most people, I'm not speaking for myself, but most people had a job that they had to go to, and that they can't do that. Where these guys were getting completely funded to come over and live here, and that was your job.
Yeah, like Edmonton and Leduc, and it's become a bit of an international hub for a while, weren't we? I mean,
not the Saville anymore, because we are now a national training center, so they don't want.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't want the international teams training using all the equipment and stuff.
They might bring spike in.
No.
Okay. So what you're saying is, so if Marcel Rock, right, if he had the China team, he couldn't go to the Saville Center. He'd have to go.
They might be able to come and
visit, have a drink in the lounge.
Well, no, they might be able to come and have a practice there and stuff. But the Saville Center has spent a lot of money on equipment to help our Canadian teams be better, and that's what it's used for. So as far as them coming over to play some competition against some of our league teams and things, they can do that they don't have a problem with doing that. But that's up to the Canadian Curling Association that made that decision, being at the National Training Center. And they just... Now,
you've always focused as a player, right? Were you ever enticed to get involved in other parts of the game, or did you at some point, like in terms of, either whether it's working with CCA or working within the province or any of these?
I did a lot of the curling, the junior camps for about 5 or 6 years, the Alberta Rocks. I was there doing that. I did take some coaching. I think I had my level 2, but hard to do that when you're actually a player. Like if you kind of almost have to focus on one or the other.
Was there another, like now that you're in a senior, has there ever been a lull? Like, were you constantly kind of competing?
Yeah.
Well into,
Yeah, I have
it's just never stopped. Yeah.
I think I took 1 year off. I wanted to go watch the Olympics.
Okay.
And that was my first year seniors, so I did not compete in seniors.
Yeah. That was which Olympics?
2010.
The 2010. Oh, okay, yeah, because you won in. I could have done the math backwards because you won the Canadians in 2013.
Yeah.
Should have probably figured it was the one before that. Yeah. Okay.
So I didn't compete in that seniors that year, but pretty well been steadily playing. Although the level of playing that has dramatically decreased because we don't practice as much as we used to.
So you've never struggled with that? Because I know a lot of time athletes that are kind of at a very high level, as it drops, it becomes frustrating, or they find they just want to walk away.
No, it has been frustrating.
Were there times where you went,
It has been frustrating, but I think I've finally realized that, hey, this is what it is. This is what senior curling is. This is what not putting as much time into the sport is.
Well, I think even if you wanted to put the amount of time, your body would go, let's not do that.
Do you see my bag of ice here on my hip right now? That's exactly
and how long was your practice today?
An hour.
An hour.
No, but I don't know.
No
what's
5
happened.
hours of practice at the Saville for you.
No. I don't know. I've just all of a sudden got some hip injury going on. So you know what? It may come a time, and it may not be in the too distant future, where I'm going to say, it's not as fun for me anymore. I enjoy who I'm playing with, but I'm missing being in the sun golfing.
Well, I was going to say, how many, do you occasionally get a summer or not a summer, a winter holiday where it's warm? You try to get away, I assume?
Yeah. Well, last year we did the same thing. We won. So we pretty well screwed up that whole time.
That's the problem with this play down curling. You win, and then the next thing you know, they're going to just send you to some other event, and then you have to deal with it. At least there's fewer zones now than there used to be, right? It used to be, if you think about trying to get out of your club, and then into a zone, and then to the Northerns, and then to a provincials, no one would ever get to Hawaii or Palm Springs.
Exactly. So imagine, I did manage to scrape about 10 days in there right after we won provincials, so I went down south, so I had a little bit of a break, but it's all good. I mean, we're thrilled to be representing Alberta and going back again. And the Everest group are doing an amazing job at that level.
I'm not making any jokes.
They're doing. They're trying to make the seniors a bigger and better event by the promotion of it now, and it's been.
Well, I went to it when it was here in town. I popped in. Well, and then that was the first thing I saw. I was like, so it's a funeral home and they're sponsoring the seniors. I go, well, shouldn't this be the masters or the grandmasters? And maybe, these people are still in their 50s.
I still have an issue with being called seniors.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. They don't, in golf now, it's the Champions Tour.
I know.
Why can't it be the Champions Tour?
Hey, listen, I've written a few letters to Danny Lamoureux and a few other CCA people saying, okay, look, people coming at 50 are not seniors yet. And I said, I'm almost embarrassed to tell them I'm in seniors because they think I'm 65.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, no, they can, but then it's the masters later. Like, it should be the masters and then the seniors.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Seniors is not the correct, but they said, well, it's not up to us because it's a world, it's a world name. It's not just Canadian name. So I said, come on, just get a movement going and get this changed.
Well, if you keep going a few more times, maybe they'll listen to you.
Hey, I don't know if I have many more years left in me. As I say, it's, I enjoy my teammates. We have a lot of fun together and stuff. But I'm sort of looking at going, okay, it's getting to a point where Bruce and I still want to do some more traveling. And I keep taking that time away from us when I'm winning. Mm-hmm. So
and you hate to lose, so that's...
I know, that's my problem. I can't stand losing. So anyways, it's been great, though. I've really been so lucky I've had some wonderful teammates over however many years I've been curling. I was at 42, and we've had some great times with some, lots of fun things to think about.
Okay, so what's the wildest story that you can say officially without...
Wildest? I have a funny story. Story.
Yeah.
So the time when we did go to the Worlds, we had to get tested after we won Scotties. And so that all happened. It took me forever because I am a skip that hardly would ever leave the ice at any time, right? So we had a 17-minute break in between the fifth end. So I thought, well, I might as well go to the bathroom because I've got nothing else for 17 minutes. And so when it came time to doing the pee test at the end of the game, I couldn't go pee. I hadn't drank any water during the game. So, they're filling me with like bottles of water trying to...
Because they want to take it right after the event. They can't. Is there a time period where this has to happen?
No, right after.
Yeah.
Anyways, the whole banquet was all mad because of 2 hours late.
Just waiting for you to pee.
Just waiting for me to pee. Anyway, so we are ready to go to the Worlds, and it is April 1st. And I said to my teammates, I phoned them up, each one at a time, and say, I'm laughing so hard that it sounds like I'm crying. And I tell them that I failed the test.
Okay.
My drug test. I failed the drug test. Well, Heather wasn't home, so I left her a message on her answer. Katie's already trying to figure out, she says, okay, so can we use the second sample or something like, she's trying to already work through it, how we can get past it. Brenda goes, April Fools, I know you're trying to kid me. My father hangs up on me, yelling at me, you what? Slams the phone down. I leave a message for our sponsor, and at that time it was Bruce. We hadn't been going out yet. Yeah. He's somewhere overseas, I guess, and he's phoning his lawyer, trying to get this mess fixed up. I get a phone call back about 5 o'clock. Heather is bawling, and I'm trying to figure out why she's crying. Heather, what's wrong? What's wrong? She goes, what are we going to do? You failed the drug test. And I start laughing. She goes, why are you laughing? It's April Fools, Heather.
So you took this to the extreme. You told your sponsor. You told everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You didn't phone the CCA, though, did you?
Oh, but they got me back, believe me.
Okay. But you didn't phone the CCA.
No, I didn't phone the CCA.
That might have been a little too much.
And part of that, I think it was at the Worlds. Heather, we were wearing, I'm sure it's happened to a few people. You wear your little microphone on the back, and ran in for fifth end break, and she dropped the toilet. And she's kind of freaking out.
Given a few of the things that Heather said on air, I mean, probably sometimes, especially back then, it might be for the best. I mean, standards in television have changed now, so you can get away with shitballs and other things.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Oh, funny.
You're mentioning how in the seniors now, in the Champions League now, that you're playing against a lot of these other women that you played in the juniors against, which is kind of fascinating. Now, through the years you've competed against a lot of women, in particular Alberta and then in Canada. Was there anyone that was sort of a nemesis? Was there somebody that you just sort of, or either you kind of had their number or they had yours, or somebody that just, particularly maybe in even northern Alberta where you were, battling? You can remember?
Well, it's funny because I think we actually had Sandra Schmerler's number.
Did you?
Yeah. I think there was a few times there in a few years that we were playing them. We were probably one of the only teams to beat them. We beat them in the 97 trials. I think we're the only team that did. And then we beat them in the Scotties that we won. They had a couple losses there, but They quit after 6 ends that game. We beat them in actually, Sandra had passed away by this time, but they had the last chance to get into the Olympic trials, I think, for 2001.
Pre-trials, yeah.
Pre-trials. We beat them in that. So we actually had their number.
Yeah.
They might not admit that,
but for any reason other than just maybe just seemed to work out against in those games. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they were a great team, and I think I used to just get fired up playing like that. And I'm not saying we beat them every time, but
they did okay. It's not like you can. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There were several Scotties where they were at where we weren't. But anyways, yeah, we had some great games against their team. Other than that, I can't think of any teams.
Anybody in the province that just used to get under your skin because they have your number a little bit, or no? You always
not that I can think of. We played Deb Santos a lot, but I think we probably had their number more than they had ours.
Got your fair share. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that,
Now, was there any? I always find in the men's games there's these stories of gamesmanship, like little things that people would do. What did you find in the women's game in particular in Alberta? Was there, and you don't have to name names, it's okay, but were there people that would do little things? Either they'd say things or try and get in your head or move or anything like that?
I didn't find that in Alberta. But there was a few others that I wasn't happy about how they there were a few things that they did that
like in the nationals, like in the Scotties, or in events like Cashfield?
Just more in events that it happened at, and I thought, really, do you really have to do that to win? Like it didn't sit well with me.
Like what kind of things? Like just where someone would stand or be, or what was like?
Here's one where you got choice of hammer or rocks. Okay, so you flip the coin. And so I don't know what was actually said, but when we go out we knew we lost the toss. And so they watched us go out, or no, I guess there was no pre-game practice because it was just an event. And so we go to sit down in the hack, we take the rocks and sit down in the hack, going ready to throw. Oh, no, we want rocks. We don't want hammer. It was like, what?
Okay.
Like, why do you wait till we pick the rocks?
So they waited to see what you chose. Okay. Yeah.
I thought, who does that?
Now, did you get hammer though?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's an interesting
decision.
No,
but the rocks were bad on that sheet.
Okay.
But
and did you know that?
No.
No, okay, interesting.
It wasn't until after I found out. But I thought, interesting, they wanted rocks and hammer, but they waited to see what we picked first.
Because in other words, if you take the other ones,
then they'd
be willing to be okay with hammer.
Yeah. So I thought that was
That's a little shady.
That was a little shady.
Yeah.
I won't mention any names of who that did that, but if they listen to the podcast, they'll know who they were.
Well, I heard a story that at a bonspiel where people would sneak into the club to actually go and like change rock handle.
Really?
Before events.
Oh, man.
And again, we don't know if this was all it's stories handed down from other people, so you never really know how true they are or what ended up behind them. But people will go to incredible lengths now in terms of their rocks, right? It's really, when you think back to the 70s when you were growing up, nobody even thought about the rocks very much at all, right?
Yeah.
It's
not something. Well, and I've had a few people burn rocks on us and not admit it, but that doesn't happen much anymore. I mean, and especially in seniors, it's almost the opposite. You go, oh no, that's okay. Champions.
Oh, it's very polite. You find that.
Oh yeah.
Now it's
Yeah.
So you're saying it's not competitive? Is that what?
Oh no, it's competitive, but it's just quite a bit more. It's quite a bit different.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So were you always very fiercely competitive then? Like, have you softened a bit, or do you still have the?
Oh, I don't know. Ask players that play against me. I don't know. I'm still pretty competitive. Yeah.
But were you easy to play for then?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Probably yes and no. I mean, I probably expected a lot out of my players of knowing. Like, I'll give you an example. If you're a lead and you're 4 up, if you throw that thing short, I'll be mad.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving an example. Like I expected them to know how to play. They didn't do it ever on purpose and stuff like that. So it's not that I'd probably say more under my breath than I would to them. But I'm definitely probably have softened a lot.
Did you be hard on yourself?
Oh yeah. I get mad at myself when I miss, and I'm sure every skip does.
Yeah.
Because you're the one that controls the last end or last missing or making or getting the points or not. So yeah, I guess I want to make sure I try to do my best. I'm a perfectionist, so.
Which, like you say, you have to probably, in seniors, you have to probably be a little more accepting.
Oh, yes.
Right? of being a perfectionist, because you know that not every shot's going to be perfect, and so you have to kind of plan for it a little bit.
Right.
I imagine. Yeah.
Right. And I think, as I say, it's taken me a few years. The first few years were probably a little more frustrating because, you know, I've just come off of playing with a really good team. Caitlin Laws was my third, and my other two players, Tracy and Raylene. So we had a good team, and we had won a lot of spiels that year. We were supposed to have been in the trials, and we just didn't play good enough at the pre-trials. So that was really disappointing for us. But so I decided at that year, I thought, you know what, I'm 50 years old. I'm not getting any younger. The girls are getting younger coming into the ladies. So I thought, why do I want to still compete?
Yeah. It was a lot different than when you were coming in 79, right?
Yeah.
You know, at this point, it just seems like it's every year there's a crop, right?
Yes.
Of young players coming in.
It's amazing how great these curlers are that are coming up. So I just thought, I'm not competitive enough at that level. So I must need to move on here. And so I did. And the problem for me was I'm not moving on with my team that could change levels. I'm having to get all new teams because these girls are 17 years younger, 15 years younger than me. So it was tough for me to move into seniors and have that many more misses going on. But I've got a good team now. This is our third year together, and we're having lots of fun together. And they are good curlers. They're all good curlers. So.
Good, yeah.
Olympic medalist, a world senior champion, and Shannon Nemo. She may not be a Canadian champion, but she's
was there a world senior in 2013 when you guys won the Canadian? There was, right? When you went, okay, and you guys went on to win that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And where was that overseas, or
that was in Fredericton, where we're heading now.
Oh, okay.
On Friday.
Yeah. So okay. So that was so the Worlds were there at that time, and then for Canadians.
Now we're going for Canadians. Yeah. They ran an amazing event back in the Worlds. Terrific facility. So New Brunswick is like another kind of popular spot for you too. You got Japan and New Brunswick. These are two spots that you've seemed to end up in quite a bit. Yeah. They ran an amazing event there for the World Championship, and they had a double arena. So you could play in either side. So it was really great ice. And I mean, we had some crazy games like winning 21-1. And it was ridiculous, some of the scores that we were winning by. But we knew that at some point we were going to come up against some good teams. And we did. We almost lost the semifinal. She had a chance, I think, to hit and stick on her last 1 in 10. But anyways, we went extra end and we won and went on to the final, and we won it in 6 ends. So
and they let you stop after 6.
Yeah,
didn't have to keep it going for TV.
No,
you're okay at the
there was no TV. It's streamed. It was being streamed, but I think we got 6 in the first end or something like that. Anyways, it was we were pretty dominating there for then. So, and then my two other teammates went on to Masters after that.
So now now that you're a refined vet in the in this league, you're bringing in the
younger ones now.
Younger ones coming.
Yeah, now I'm the old one again.
So is there anything else we didn't cover? Or anything else we didn't chat about?
Everything. It's been fun. Thanks for asking me to be on your podcast.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, were there any, we didn't dig into those days of the 70s too much, but...
you know what? Because my memory, I can't remember too much back then.
It's funny because Paul Gazel, I found the same scenario. He didn't seem to necessarily remember every specific story. Those were probably some good times then. That was kind of an interesting time. Where you guys didn't have beards, clearly, but as you said, you had the white pants. You had the
white tornadoes. We were called.
You've got to have some good photos around here then that you're going to let me put on the Facebook site.
Oh, I probably do have some of those pictures of our team. Yeah. Well, there were some good memories from back then, and as I said, I've had a lot of teammates over that many. That's 42 years of teammates. Lots of fun, and I'm pretty well friends with all of them still. Now, a couple of them have disappeared. I don't know where they are, but mostly still keep in touch. As a matter of fact, I was just with Maureen Olson, who my teammate there, won Canadian Juniors with me 2 years. I was just with her in Palm Springs. So I think that's really what curling for me is about now. I go back and look at all the people I've met over the years and made some great friendships. And my life has revolved around curling. I've, played for that many years and and been to a lot of places. I've curled in every province. So you make a lot of friends along the way, and it's great I have a lot of them on Facebook, and we have some good laughs over lots of funny things. So as I say, that's yes, I've probably softened a bit in wanting to win that badly, but I'm still competitive. And as I say, I'm not sure how much longer. I want to do traveling, and the old body is starting to take a toll with the hips.
Well, you just work a little bit harder. You got a few more weeks to go, and another Canadians to try to.
I know, and
down.
Some good teams there again too. Like Sherry Anderson's back, and
it seems like she was just in the Scotties just the other.
I know,
not that long ago. So.
I know. So no, we got some great teams there again. So it'll be tough. It'll be tough.
Fun. Yeah, great. Well, thanks for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
You always had good dealings with the CCA? You'd never had any?
No, I didn't.
No?
No, there was some...
Well, that situation where you played, 4 games in...
5 games.
5 games in how many hours?
27 hours. That wasn't really a CCA thing. That was just because the rules weren't... Did you know that for the Brier that year, they changed the rules for that Brier like a week later? But that was because of our team.
Yeah.
That they changed it,
yeah.
And they also, I think the biggest thing we had with CCA was trying to have some recognition for our own sponsors. Mm-hmm. We had some pretty good sponsors along the way.
Well, I wanted to ask you that, actually. That was a note that I had.
Yeah.
Because you were kind of really one of the top teams through that era when the boycott happened in the men's game. What was happening in the women's game at that time in terms of the same conversation around sponsorship around this? Was there a similar discussion happening? And
we definitely were trying to see that we got some of our sponsors recognized at the Canadian level, because they were saying no sponsorship allowed anywhere. And so we were always fighting with them at every Canadian championship, Scotties, like, where can we put our sponsor banners? That they said we could bring them, put them. Well, every time we put them somewhere, they'd move it somewhere else.
Okay.
So that it was sort of like in a back corner so no one would see it. So we were fighting about that all the time. But as far as the women's curling tour, we wanted to support the men and do what we could to help. And that's when they eventually amalgamated. But
there was never talk of like a boycott from the women's game, was there? Or was there even a consideration that?
No, there wasn't. But I think the guys there was some other issues going on too, though, other than just sponsor thing. But I mean, I think, the money that they were bringing in for the Brier and the Scotties, they wanted to get a share of that, things like that were going on. And it's nice to see that they finally come around and are allowing some of these things to happen, because rightfully so. I mean, there wouldn't be an event without the players, right? But yet I know the CCA puts it on. So they've got to do some revenue sharing there somehow.
Well, and it's incredible in terms of how the women's game has really reached a level with the men's in terms of the money opportunity and the events. And because that wasn't around then in the late 90s, right? There was still of almost like a junior tour as it related to the men's in terms of your opportunity.
Right. But even back in 2005 and 6, when we went to the Scotties, the money that we got for playing compared to the guys was quite a bit different. But again, rightfully so, because the arena sizes were quite a bit different. We weren't bringing the same amount of people into the Scotties as the Brier.
Although it's interesting, Brier final, Scotties final gets almost the same eyeballs on the viewership on the TV, and even a lot of the Grand Slam events now. I don't know if you've noticed, they play the men's final in the middle of the day, and they play the women's final at night, and they get, a lot of times they'll get better numbers.
Yeah, I have noticed that, and it's great. I'm so happy for the women's curling. Like they've really come a long way. And in some way, some small way, I feel jealous that I'm not 20 years younger. That I can.
Well, you're playing well. I mean, if you want to take a stab back,
not happening. To try and to sacrifice your family time as well as your work and your curling and your being a mother is really tough, I find. And that's one of, I guess, my main reasons when I had a big lull there, trying to be a mother.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a whole other level now, right? In terms of, especially at the international.
Oh, yes.
You're trying to compete, like you mentioned you're trying to compete with professional teams that are paid to curl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like Eve Muirhead. I think, doesn't she get paid to curl?
pretty much. She's a professional curler.
Yeah.
And also, apparently, she's a world-class bagpiper. But that's
And a golfer.
and a golfer. She was pretty good at that too. Yeah. but she actually competed in there's like a world championships of bagpipes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, can't say I've ever tried that. I was a tap dancer.
Okay, I was really intrigued about your dad. So explain this then.
Well, okay, so funny thing is we just had a meeting here at our house. People from developer from the Keswick area of Edmonton, that's southwest Edmonton, are putting in a new area called Keswick, and they're naming it after my dad.
Okay.
And he's been a huge sort of volunteer in the city as far as being involved in a lot of things, Rotary and the Masons and the YMCA, and he's president of the Crestwood, and I can go on and on. He used to do a lot of volunteering for the POW reunion, things like that. So I guess it wasn't us, our family, but it was somebody else that put his name forward to have part of this area named after him. So He's got about 5 streets and a park being named after him, like a pond area. So they have come here to ask for our help in trying to figure out what would best depict, my father and what he was about as far as what to put in the park.
So they're not. So not only are they going to so what are they naming it? I guess. Are they like how? I mean, is it going to be?
So it'll be Gord King Pond, but the streets in his subdivision are all things like King's Close and King this and King that.
Okay.
So all the streets in that area will be named after.
Wow.
So yeah, pretty cool. He was part of the Great Escape. I don't know if you knew that.
No, that's I had me really intrigued. I mean, I love that movie, and of course, I know it's a Hollywood rendition. But what was so he was actually one of the POWs that got out.
He was a prisoner of war. He got shot down over Germany and was captured and was a prisoner for 3 years over in Germany and spent the next 3 years trying to escape. So him and all his comrades were busy digging tunnels and trying to survive.
Well, I understand that a lot of the POWs that escaped got captured actually, and some of them were actually even then executed afterwards.
Yes,
wow.
76 escaped.
Yeah.
73 got captured and 50 got shot.
And so where did your dad fall into it? We know he didn't get shot, but where did he?
No, his number, he didn't actually get out. He was like number 141, I think was his number. So he didn't actually escape.
Oh yeah, because they found him out by the time that happened.
Right. Their tunnel was a little short when they came up. They didn't come up into the woods like they thought. So it took them way longer to get out of the tunnel than they figured. So this is the reason why he didn't get escaped, which is probably why I'm here, because he lived.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, because he's and we should mention, he's 97. He just had his 97th birthday recently.
Right.
Yeah.
He did.
Wow. Well,
a nice little visit from Wayne Gretzky to top it off.
Yeah. That's quite a life lived for sure, and what a way to start it because he would have been a pretty young man even at that point then, right?
Right. He was. He started when he was about 18 to doing some training and stuff, and then was on a training mission like that. He was in a training plane when he got shot down. Oh,
so he hadn't really even seen action yet at that point. He was just starting.
That was his first mission.
Oh wow! And he ends up POW. Unbelievable. So did he ever
shot down and parachuting down?
Did he ever kind of talk about that experience, or did he tell a story?
Oh no, he's got some great logbooks and lots of things in the logbooks. He had lots of stories. I used to drag him to my kids' classes all the time when they were young, growing up, to tell some stories, because not very often you've got someone that was, being a live POW from the Great Escape, being your friend's dad, right? And so back a few years ago, we actually flew back to Germany, which is now Poland. They gave the land back to the Polish people after the war, and we went back to the camp, what was left of it.
Yeah.
And they filmed a show. It's called The Great Escape Revealed. It's on. If you Google it, it comes up in as part of a documentary.
Okay.
That he was part of, actually. So, and they tried to recreate what these POWs had to try to do to try to escape. And so they had these young RCAF guys trying to do the exact same things they did with the tools that they had. And they said, man, this is like impossible to try to build tunnels and things like that with the tools that they had.
I had a note about this. Actually, I forgot to ask you about your Hall of Fame entry, and that you do actually have a unique, I guess, position within curling, and that you're the only woman to skip both a junior Canadian, a national women's Canadian, as well as a senior Canadian.
Yes, right? This was back in 2013 after it was at the Brier in Edmonton that they had phoned me just prior to that and announced that I was going to be inducted into the Curling Hall of Fame. And oh man, I never expected it. And I got off the phone with tears in my eyes. It was pretty special for me, a real emotional moment. I didn't realize that I was even the only curler, man or woman, actually have done that. And thinking about it, though, I think there's a list of about 10 that are going to be following me unless they quit curling or something.
Yeah, there's a few chasing you now.
There's lots of probably about 10 maybe that have the chance to do what I've done if they continue to curl. That's the problem, though. You know, life gets in the way. You know, you end up having kids, things like that. A lot of these people that are coming after me are still young, and you never know which way life's going to take you. So it's hard to keep at a sport and stay competitive at it. You have to realize, though, that you have to have some great teammates along the way, because it's not an individual sport, and I don't even really classify it as an individual award, because you can't do that without some great teammates behind you. So I appreciate all the players that helped me to achieve that award, for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of times fans don't really appreciate how much, and in particular sweeping and line call, really make the difference between a good team and a great team, and how, you know, when you're trying to make that last shot to hit the forefoot or the button, you're giving it to the sweeper, right?
Absolutely.
To a large extent. Yeah. And, you know, if they judge poorly, or they, you know, have difficulty with it, or they get too excited, or they have that adrenaline, like I think we had talked about before, all of a sudden that rock slips by or falls short, and then all of a sudden it became, Cathy missed the shot. But in reality,
I know.
right?
It's funny. Yeah, exactly that. And I appreciate, even at this stage, we've got players that are, you know, over 50 years old, and the amount of effort it takes to do all that sweeping. It's not easy. I mean, I just do a little bit until I get tired.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I can see why being a front ender in the Legends League, as we said, the seniors, is probably even more of a grind than when you're young and have all that energy.
Oh, yeah. Like, you know, not only do your knees hurt sliding, you've got every bone in your body hurting after a couple games in a day, sore, you got to be jumping in a hot tub. You can smell the Robb 8535 throughout the whole locker room. It's been a great run all these years, and it's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of friends along the way and great teammates. So what can I say? I'm just proud of every moment of that.